Hi everyone, Kevin with Flux here. Thank you for joining me today in our overview on LOIs. We'll be going over how to maintain and make changes to your LOI. If you should have any questions at any time during the webinar, please type it in the questions section. We'll be dedicating the last few minutes for questions and answers, so we'll be saving all of your questions for that. If we do not get to your question in time, we'll try to curate those and answer them offline. So let's go ahead and get started. In this LOI webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. What are the different types of LOIs? How do I modify my eligibility quiz? Where do I modify my LOI form? How does the LOI model appear on the dashboard? How do I connect new users and organizations? And how do I customize an invited LOI link? And as I said earlier, there will be a Q&A after the overview. So what is an LOI? An LOI is the initial form an applicant submits to indicate the intention of the applicant to apply for a grant. The registration process adds the organization and the person to your database and establishes proper relationships. This form, also called a registration form, typically asks for basic applicant information, such as primary contact name, applicant name and address, grant amount requested, start date, and as well as a brief project summary. The LOI is usually brief and can be used for registration purposes as an entry point for new users into Flux, and should not be used as a pre-proposal. Today's webinar will focus on the two most common types of LOIs used within Flux. Those two are the standard LOI and the invited LOI. A standard LOI is accessible to grantees via a link from the home page, while a solicited LOI requires the grantee to have a specific link in order to access the form. We'll start with a setup of the open version, then move to the special configuration required for an invited LOI. A standard LOI is accessible to grantees from the landing or login page of your site. Users can access the LOI through a button which links to the form, as you can see here. The text of this button is configurable in the admin panel. If you'd like to change the default text, click into the admin panel, go to Plugins, switch to the Add-ons tab, and then select the Landing Page panel. Now scroll to the bottom of the Attributes section, and you'll find a box labeled LOI Sign Up Button Text. This is where you can customize the text that appears on the landing page button. And of course, be sure to hit save before exiting this view. Once a potential grantee clicks this button from the landing page, they'll be taken to your LOI form. You can decide whether or not you would like to add an eligibility quiz to make sure registrants meet certain criteria. The eligibility quiz exists as a component on your LOI form, and users are considered eligible if they answer the questions correctly and ineligible if the answers are not correct. Now, to modify the text or layout of your eligibility quiz, click into the admin panel, navigate to Forms, select the LOI model type, and select the LOI theme associated with the landing page button. Once the appropriate theme is selected, you should then switch into the builder mode by clicking on the hammer icon at the top right of the panel. Once in builder mode, all of the form objects of your form will appear. Go ahead and select the eligibility quiz component. Now in the attributes panel of the eligibility quiz component, you can configure several things. the label on the Submit button, the workflow state ineligible registrants will enter once they hit the Submit button, the questions and the correct answers to the questions, and also keep in mind that all questions must have a yes or no answer. Once you're done editing, remember to hit save before exiting this component. Once a grantee has successfully completed the eligibility quiz, they will be taken to the later part of the form where they can enter the rest of their information. As with the eligibility quiz, anything on this form can be changed in the admin panel by switching the theme to the builder mode and making edits to the form objects there. Once an eligible registrant has submitted their information, it will appear as a record on the LOI card in the dashboard. Make sure you also choose the appropriate workflow state filter on the card to visualize the new registrant. The LOI card may appear blank when you first add the card to the dashboard, so checking the workflow state filter is a good troubleshooting step if you aren't seeing any records. Once you've reviewed a record, you can create a new people and organization record by clicking on the connect links at the top of the record. One thing to note here is that only admins should connect new users, as login credentials will only auto-generate if the connecting user has admin privileges. Now that we've gone over the basic structure and workflow of an LOI, let's talk about configuring a solicited or invited LOI. The setup of these LOIs is basically the same, with the addition of a customizable URL to send out to potential registrants. To access and modify this URL, go to the theme for the solicited LOI and click the gear icon next to the theme name. The Advanced Settings modal will appear, and you should then expand the Advanced Settings section of this modal and scroll down. You will see a text box labeled Extended URL. Anything you type in here will be added to the end of your site's URL with the addition of \apply. So in this example, the word invited will be added. Below the text box is a checkbox where you can specify whether or not you want external users to be able to access this form. If this box is left unchecked, only logged in users will be able to access this form. Now this concludes today's webinar on letters of inquiry on Flux, and I hope you enjoyed it. If there are any features I did not cover extensively, we'll be hosting trainings in the future to address these features. You may also learn about any of these features by visiting our knowledge base. Now let's open it up to some questions. First question, can users with employee profile connect new users? The answer is going to be no. Only users with admin privileges should connect new users. So if somebody with an employee profile connects a new user, login credentials will not be created, and the new user will not be able to access the grantee portal. So make sure that if you are going to connect new users, have admin privileges. Okay, next question here. My LOI card is blank when I add it to the dashboard, but I know records have been created. Why aren't the records appearing? I think we went over this a little bit earlier, but you must filter an LOI card for the workflow states in order for the records to appear. So please add the appropriate filter so you can see these records. Okay, looks like that's it for the questions. So we're going to go ahead and call it for today. You'll be able to find video recordings of past webinars on our knowledge base. Today we went over the basics of LOIs on Flux. We learned about the different types of LOIs. We learned how to modify my eligibility quiz. We learned where you could find and modify my LOI form. We learned how does the LOI model appear on the dashboard. How do I connect new users and organizations? And how do I customize an invited LOI link? To learn more and access video recordings of this webinar, please visit our knowledge base at flux.io/knowledge. There you'll be able to find a list of our upcoming webinars, links to register for future webinars, and recordings of past webinars under training webinars. Or, of course, feel free to ask us at support, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope to host you again at our next training. Have a great day.